We're now going to hear from the candidates who are running for Benton County Commissioner in District 2. They are Lori Sanders and Sean Small. So we'll get right to it. And Ms. Sanders, if you could give us your opening statement.
Thank you. Well, first I want to thank the League for letting us be here to speak to you tonight. Thank you for the opportunity and the chance to just introduce myself to the audience. My name is Lori Sanders. I'm running for Benton County Commissioner in District 2. And I've been raised here my entire life, born and raised here. I grew up in the Findlay area and graduated from high school there. Went on to Columbia Basin College where I met my husband. We've been married for 30 years now. 3 kids, 2 grandkids. And that's a really good thing to do, is to have grandkids. I'm really enjoying that. I really feel fortunate, as I'm sure you guys do, to live in this area. We have a wealth of natural resources and beauty, and I feel like people overlook the Tri-Cities, and I'm kind of okay with that on some level because we get to enjoy it for ourselves. But my husband and I are hikers. We backpack. We've backpacked the entire Pacific Crest Trail, or the majority of it, and Washington State is really a beautiful place to be, I can tell you from comparison. I've been blessed with a variety of opportunities that have prepared me to be a highly effective leader. I'm a third-term commissioner for Benton PUD. That's an elected position. I have served on the Energy Northwest Executive Board for 8 years, and that's with our nuclear power plant. Most of you probably know that. And while I was there, I oversaw a budget 10 times the size of the county and hundreds of more employees. I've also owned my own business for over 30 years, and I have had experiences with that led me to want to be into politics at some level. And most of that came from the fact that when you're a business owner and you're living on like $400 a month, because it takes a lot of effort to get a business started, and you're paying more in taxes than you're paying yourself, it really gets you considering where that's going. I'm a fiscal conservative, and I'll always be looking out for you as a person and a business, as an advocate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Small, your opening statement.
Yes, ma'am. Well, first of all, thank you. And Ms. Cayato, I really appreciate everything you've done. You know, I know you've been around for a number of years in regards to the League of Women Voters. and the rest of the League of Women Voters, I appreciate your guys' assistance in actually throwing these forums together. Now, in regards of me, I'm very blessed. I actually married my high school sweetheart. We've actually been married now for 30 years. We have, if you include my daughter-in-law, we have 3 beautiful children. And I have an 8-month-old grandbaby. Granddaughter. Matter of fact, I'll give my wife, she's a grandma too. Consequently, it's come I wear my grandpa glasses. In regards of my career, I started my law enforcement back in 1988 with Prosser PD. I then got up with the county back in 1990. I was with them for a total of almost 23 years, which I think is just a huge assistance, just for the simple fact that the county commissioners, and specifically the Benton County funding, is exactly about 80% of criminal justice, which allows me to be able to have a pretty good eye on what's going on in regards of some of the funding that we need and some of the programs we need to implement. I have 3 main priorities. One is actually public safety, and I'm very proud what we've actually done, from the gang task force to the Metro Drug Task Force to the crimes against children units, after we actually arrested over 26 child predators last year. In regards to mental health, I've been part of mental health for almost 13 years. I've been the chair of the Greater Columbia Behavioral Health for almost 5, and I take that with great pride. I work with NAMI along with several other entities, what we've done. We've actually helped Lourdes establish a 16-bed that actually helps for the transition. We've also helped local Prosser school district have to actually have on-site mental health assistance for the school districts. And we are now trying to expand those things. In regards of agriculture, I've assisted several different farmers in regards of getting assistance from actually laying in multi-million-dollar pipes, with the assistance of Mr. Dan Newhouse, with the assistance of Sharon Brown, actually assisted with DNR and getting money to the farmers. And I'll be able to talk a little bit sooner, but I appreciate you guys' vote, and just know that I have 2,000 contacts on my phone from the constituents here. I care about what goes on in this county, and I'm always available to listen to my constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you mentioned mental health. We got 4 questions from the audience to do with mental health, plus we had prepared 2. So I'm going to try to hit the highlights here. Okay. Treatment for those with mental illnesses continues to be a problem in our country. As a commissioner, what could you do to provide more treatment for those with mental health problems in our area, especially when there is a potential of violence to themselves or others? Another part to that, what more could be done to keep the mentally ill out of jail? And I guess more broadly, what are your top priorities for this issue in Benton County? So, Ms. Sanders, we'll have you go first.
I think I have the question. Do you want to?
Well, just
it's
mental
blended.
health in general.
Mental health in general. So let me just tell you that when I started my campaign, I met with my supporters and we talked about mental health because it's an issue that I'm passionate about. And they all said, well, you know, that didn't go very well when so-and-so ran, and not to make it a focus. But I asked the community, what issues are important to you? I had a Facebook poll, and mental health rose to the top. Then I went to the Benton County Fair and had a booth there and asked people, what's important to you? And mental health rose to the top. And I just said, you know, the heck with it. I've got to be who I am and stand on the issues that I'm you know, passionate about. And what my belief is that how we could have funded mental health, I thought some of the public safety tax should have gone for mental health prevention. I believe that we need a coordinated crisis center, and I'm not talking about a building per se as I am a system. When I was knocking on doors, just to give you an example how this works, I had a woman tell me that just the day before, her son, who has mental health issues and is homeless, he had finally decided to get help. So they went to get an appointment to see someone so he could get some treatment. And she was told he couldn't have an appointment for 2 weeks. And who knows where he's going to be by then. And sure enough, she called me 2 weeks later. She said, we can't find our son. He's out on the streets again. It's just tragic that we need to have, and the standard of care is like 30 days. We need to have more responsive, coordinated mental health care, and the county needs to prioritize it. We can have the money if we prioritize it.
Since I asked so many questions, let's go another 30 seconds if you have something more to say, and then we'll give him 2 minutes.
Unless, do you think I answered the whole question?
Oh, you did.
Okay.
I was
I'm
just going
good
to
with
offer
that.
you more time if
No,
you
I'm
had
good.
more to say. Okay.
I'll take the extra 30 seconds. I got lots to say.
Is that okay with you?
Yes, I'm not
Okay.
okay with I'll take the 30 seconds. No, I'll take it at the end. I'm fine.
Okay.
Okay.
I should have said that to start with.
No, that's all right.
I'm
fine.
sorry.
No, I'm fine.
Go ahead, 2 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. First of all, people do not have to be incarcerated to receive mental health assistance. There's a flyer right now that actually is going across the county in different areas that specifically says that. That is not correct whatsoever. And it's actually very alarming, to be real frank with you. I have been part of mental health. Matter of fact, one of the first things I wanted to do when I became a commissioner is I seriously was looking at something called a Consolidated Crisis Response Center. I was looking at that very, very strong. And then guess what? I contacted people that's actually their world. And I sat down and had several conversations for quite some time. They pretty much told me that, man, here it is, 2010. If we start this, it's going to be very, very difficult to keep this thing sustainable. Just for the simple fact that throughout even Washington State, a multitude of operations like that, CCRC, Consolidated Crisis Response Centers, actually closed down. And so what can we do to get as close as we can? Well, we could actually have something like the transition. And that would be able to assist us quite a bit, be able to have actually individuals be able to be assessed and be able to actually be assisted to either get back on medication or get on medication. Now, let's go and expand some of the things we actually have going on. First of all, we have diversion. We have mental health courts right now that I've actually been very proud of being part of that after our great county decided to go ahead and actually pass that public safety sales tax. We've done a multitude of things. We start talking about mobile crisis units. Guess what? We actually have an entity right now called Lords that actually received a True Blood grant that actually assists them to be able to put mobile crisis units in the patrol cars so they can respond. It's just outstanding. These are the types of things that we need to have. We already talked about mental health diversion, huge deal. We also talk about some of the on-site school mental health facilities that we have, and we're now trying to expand with public safety sales tax funds that actually has been utilized for that.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything you thought of to add there?
I guess I'm just going to say it again. The way that we fund mental health is make it a priority. We can't be concerned that someday down the road it might not be funded. The citizens are speaking very loudly and very clearly that this is a priority to them, and it needs to be a priority to the county commissioners.
Okay, thank you. I think we're even on that now. Okay, Mr. Small. How important would you rate the wine industry to the current and future economic health of Benton County? And what role, if any, should the county government play in maintaining and promoting that industry? Wine.
The wine? Well, I think anything. I mean, basically, once again, we have an amazing county. People don't realize what kind of actually resources that we have. We have Hanford, we have agriculture, and we have everything else. We have a very diverse groups of individuals that continue to be entrepreneurs and actually create economic development, so therefore we can have jobs. When it comes down to the wine agriculture, I can't necessarily say that we actually specifically focus on wine. As far as what we focus on is basically creating jobs and be able to assist individuals to be able to make a better life for themselves along with the people around us here today. So I can't specifically say in regards to wine. We've actually assisted a multitude of things in regards to different areas of when it comes down to some mom and pop shops that we have down in Richland. We've actually done some ribbon cuttings down in Benton City with some new operations that down there when it comes down to some of these foods. It not necessarily is a wine, it's a multitude of everything.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sanders?
Well, I kind of smile at this one because I do my share of promoting this. Every time I travel, I order Washington wine, so I think we can all do that. It is something to be really proud of. I don't know if people are aware of it, but you know, this industry, the appellations that we have, they're world class, and it's really a lot to be proud of. And I think that a lot of this can fall in not only the agriculture area, but I work with this in the water issues. You might not realize that with power, being a Benton PUD commissioner, that the power costs are about 35% of the costs that farmers have. So I'm very in tune to their needs and to their plans for growth, and work with them in every way that I can to see that they're able to grow the acreage that they want. I've also volunteered actually to pick grapes with a group called Wine to Water, which is where the proceeds go for water facilities in Uganda and other places. So I think it's a great industry that we can promote through tourism, and we can put it on our legislative agendas to try to attract dollars for that.
Thank you. You'll go first on this next question. By population, Benton County is the 10th largest county in the state, with a population close to 200,000. It is also one of the faster growing counties. How well prepared is the county to meet the needs that such growth could require, in your opinion?
Well, I've actually been very impressed with the Public Works Department in the county area when I have worked with them. My big issue is effective government, and I'm a strong believer in strategic planning and being ahead of the game of things. And I would be working with the Public Works and the on transportation. I sit on a committee from the Benton Franklin Governmental Council that has all to do with transportation. And even though I'm a Benton PUD commissioner, we're called to some of the similar things, so I sit on that agency. And I'm impressed with the planning that goes into it, and I would like to see, not that there isn't already done, I just would like to see the plans that the county has and the, not just ideas of development, but strategically how they're going to get from here to there and be a supporter of that.
Thank you. Mr. Small?
All right, let's talk about urban growth management. I am very proud as far as what kind of a team that we have, let alone the working relationships we have with a multitude of different entities that actually create growth. Benton County, as far as when it comes to Benton County commissioners, just so you know, Benton County government's a lot different than it is when it regards to the cities. We have certain RCWs and actually restraints that we can only do so much. But what we do, though, is actually work with our partners. And we have a lot of them. We have the ports, we have the cities, we have a few other entities among those. And what we do is we actually have an Urban Growth Management Act. We actually work with our planning department, along with our code enforcement, those types of things. They actually work with all these different entities, and they look and they project what kind of growth they plan on having anywhere from 5 to 10 years. And then sometimes what we wind up doing is actually assessing that and go, look, how can we turn around and actually make that into maybe a light industrial, or maybe a heavy industrial area, or perhaps we need to turn around and actually give them some land and we'll go and trade a little bit, so therefore they can actually start building some houses, those types of things. We wound up actually doing some great work not too long ago for Prosser. Prosser was hurting with a lot of different areas and not having the availability of actually growth. So we wound up actually assisting them a huge amount. Matter of fact, they're going to be putting in almost 150 houses, and they're actually putting them in right now.
Thank you. Okay, our last question, I think. Mr. Small, we'll start with you. One of the goals of the state growth management law was to require better planning between the cities and the counties with regards to development. How well do you think such planning is working in Benton County, and do you see areas where change might be needed?
Well, I think actually all the cities and the county actually work very well together when it comes down to, and you said urban growth management, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Matter of fact, not too many years ago, we actually were trying to look at having them go ahead and change a large area down the South Ridge in Kennewick. Do you guys remember that? We were very hesitant in having FutureWise take a look at us and go, hey, I think you guys might have been rushing this a little bit. We better not do that. So we talked to the cities, and the cities of Kennewick was very, very focused on wanting to do this. And guess what? We wound up taking their request and we wound up actually allowing it. We wound up actually making a motion to allow that. But however, we did talk to them. Matter of fact, I remember actually talking to the mayor going, if we come back and get a possible lawsuit from FutureWise, are you going to take care of it? And they said, absolutely. Well, a few months later, FutureWise came back and said, you know what, we can't be doing that. It's a good idea, but you're not quite ready to go ahead and develop it out that much further. Kennewick did an outstanding job. They honored that, and they actually retracted the request, and then we started working in some other areas where they could continue to work on growth. That's just one area that I could tell you, but we had 2 minutes, so I thought I'd go and tell you.
Thank you. Ms. Sanders?
Well, I think what this is kind of alluding to in one area is just being able to work with other entities. And one of the things I can tell you, I already mentioned that I sit on the board for the Benton Franklin Governmental Council. And one of the things that I will do is I will show up. I will actually attend the meetings, and I'll do what I can to help in the areas. I see a lot of coordination going on there, and it just really I mentioned it before that some entities get these little silos of power and they're trying to protect their own resources and not working together. I'm a very collaborative leader. I have good relationships with people in the city, with different jurisdictions, and I hope to just continue that on. As far as specifically to the Growth Management Act, I think that when the county and the cities do come together to try to negotiate these items, that I would like to see a little bit more leverage given from the county side towards affordable housing, using more infill spaces within the city, within the different cities, to help promote affordable housing, and maybe give a little bit of leverage there we'll support you in this, but can you do this too? And try to work in a more collaborative way.
Thank you.
I believe we could actually do a rebuttal if we wanted to.
No,
No?
no.
Okay.
But I am going to ask you one more question, and all I want is either a yes or a no, or I don't know.
Somewhat for me saying anything about rebuttal.
Oh, it's a different question.
Yes, ma'am.
The county seat is located in Prosser in the northwest corner of the county. Many of the services are located in Kennewick and Richland, and there was a move several years ago to move the county seat to Kennewick, which failed. And actually, the league was very active in that. And that's, in fact, where I met you before you were a commissioner. In the future, would you ever consider moving the county seat to Kennewick, where the Justice Center is located? And you can go first. Yes, no, or you're not sure?
That is not a fair question at all.
Consider it. Would you consider it?
It's up to the people.
Okay. All right. What do you have to say?
Well, you got more than one word for him, so I'm going to give one. The courthouse is to Prosser like the fairgrounds is to Findlay, and it's important to the people of Prosser. It's probably not that important to most people here in Kennewick. It might be an inconvenience to the commissioners and people who work at the county, but I would have to say absolutely no, I would not be supportive of moving the courthouse from Prosser to Kennewick.
Okay. Thank you. That you're satisfied with what you said? Up to the people?
Well, I didn't know we could have that many words.
Well, I didn't know I was okay to ask the question, but I was curious if it's still an issue. Did you have much more to say? No. Okay. Well, you gave a good answer. Up to the people. Okay. Now we'll move to closing statements. And Ms. Sanders, would you please go first?
Okay. Well, I really am appreciative of the time to be here with you. I've told you about my experience as an effective leader. I've told you about being a PUD commissioner for 14 years and managing budgets out at Energy Northwest. I've told you about being a business owner for 30 years. One thing I haven't really said at much of these venues, this is our last venue together, debating or in a forum, and I would like to say that I'm very grateful for the tone that has been in our election, and there's some really nasty elections out there, and I want to say that Mr. Small and I have both treated each other respectfully, and I'm grateful for that. And I wish you the best of luck, and regardless of what happens, I do hope I win, but either way, both of us can hold our heads high because we are good members of the community, and just thank you very much. Thank
you. We'll hold our applause till both of them. How's that? Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to throw my grandpa glasses on just for a minute. You know, there has been a lot of communication going back on for us tonight. You know, we've actually talked about having a budget of 10 times the size of the county. Well, there's other budgets actually included in the county that is actually not even part of the factor. But keep in mind, at the end of the day, it's not necessarily about how much money you have or that you're actually overlooking, because there's different layers. For instance, there's one layer of the CPAs. There's another layer of about 100 people actually looking at the budget. Then there's another layer of about 11 or 12 that actually my opponent keeps on looking at in regards of looking at this $1 billion budget. What it has to do in the bottom line, it depends on what you do with the county or what you do mission specific. I've been endorsed by every law enforcement chief and sheriff in Benton and Franklin County. The mayors from Kennewick, Richland, Prosser, West Richland, to include so many of the farmers and businesses. Reason being because they trust me. They know I'm engaged. They know I want this job. They know this job means everything to me in regards of helping the people that I work for, and that's the community of Benton County. So thank you.
Thank you. Now, let's all applaud both candidates. So, I would like to introduce the candidates running for Benton County Coroner, Jamie Rabel and William Bill Leach. So, Mr. Rabel, I will ask you to go first with your opening statement.
Thank you. First off, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for inviting us tonight. I remind everyone that the coroner is an investigative position, not a medical position. The last 3 Benton County coroners were law enforcement before being elected, including the retiring coroner now, who was a police detective before he was elected in 2010. I'm married to my wife, Jill. We live in Kennewick. Our 2 youngest children attend Kennewick High School, and our oldest son just graduated from West Point and is a 2nd lieutenant in the U.S. Army. Serving the public has been my passion and my honor. I started with the Franklin County Sheriff's Office in 1981, and I switched over to the Pasco Police Department in 1985. I've successfully worked every position I've had, and am now the detective sergeant, where I oversee a staff of 7 detectives and 1 evidence technician. Since I took over in January of 2015, we've investigated 11 homicides and solved each one of them. I've been responsible for the investigation, the assignment, and the follow-up on over 6,500 felony crimes reported to our department, and have personally investigated and or supervised over hundreds of death investigations in my career. I also supervise area detectives on the Special Investigation Unit. That's an independent criminal investigation on officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths, and I've done 7 of those investigations since 2015. I've received in-depth training in homicide and death investigation and mid-management training. Most recently, I've completed coursework in death investigation training, recognized by the American Board of Medical Legal Death Investigators. I'm the only candidate that has investigated homicides and supervised the investigation of homicides. That is why the Benton County Sheriff Jerry Hatcher and retired Sheriff Steve Keene and Larry Taylor, the Tri-City Fraternal Order of Police, the Washington State Fraternal Order of Police are among my many endorsements. The Benton County Coroner's Office needs change that is positive for the citizens that we serve, and I'm asking for your support and your vote to be the person to make that change. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leach?
Okay. So, first I want to say good evening and thanks to the Benton Franklin chapter of the League of Women Voters for arranging this forum, and I want to thank everybody who managed to stay here this late. We appreciate that. And they did save the best for the last. Usually they would have put us first, but everybody would have left after we were done, so they waited. So I've been a resident of Benton County for over 53 years. I've lived in Benton County, I raised my family in Benton County, and I've worked in Benton County. Benton County is my home. Benton County is where I've loyally served the citizens of Benton for over 22 years, first in law enforcement for over 17 years, and now as a deputy coroner for over 5.5 years. I've been married to my lovely wife, Rita, back there, for over 40 years. We have 4 wonderful children, and with their spouses, who I'm very proud to call family, and we have 5 grandchildren as well. In early 2013, Coroner John Hansons heard I was thinking about retiring from law enforcement. He knew I was an honest and experienced investigator, so he asked if I would consider working for him as a deputy coroner. So I've been a deputy coroner now for over 5.5 years, and I've conducted, not supervised, but conducted over 700 medical legal death investigations. That's a ton of people. In October 2016, I earned my nationally recognized certification as a registered medical legal death investigator from the American Board of Medical Legal Death Investigators. I didn't take a basic online class to get my certifications. I did it by hands-on work. I assist in the daily operations of the coroner's office by participating in budgeting, scheduling, technology upgrades, policy updates, intern training, and many other aspects of the day-to-day operations of the office. Before becoming a deputy coroner, I was in law enforcement proudly with the West Richland Police Department for over 17 years. I was a detective conducting investigations of nearly every possible crime against property and persons. I was responsible for reviewing many of the reports, training, overseeing investigations, and conducting presentations to the citizens and organizations in the area. I was also a sergeant for 6 years, responsible for supervising my patrol squad and the reserve officer patrol, which is up to a dozen officers. I also involved in vehicle maintenance and acquisition, policy writing, training, and several other aspects of operating the department. My decision to seek the office of coroner wasn't made on a whim. It was made soon after becoming a deputy coroner because I saw the need to build on the many years of professional service the citizens have enjoyed. And I've consistently maintained my platform for improving certain areas of the coroner's office since announcing my decision to seek the office. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start our questions with you, Mr. Rabel.
The person that filed first, correct?
Is that correct? That's what,
It's okay, I'm tough. Hit me.
okay. Did you file first?
No.
Oh, do you want to vote?
No.
I thought I had it
He started first.
down.
Yes,
Okay, we'll
let's
just
do that.
proceed then. Thank you. Most people's only contact with a coroner comes from watching TV. What do you think is the most important part of the job from the public's point of view?
First,
Job of coroner.
First off, we have to be respectful and caring for the deceased, and we also have to show compassion for the living. Part of the job is taking custody of the remains and protecting those remains, protecting all evidence with that, the remains of that person. After that, we have to work with law enforcement and a hired forensic pathologist that is flown into or traveled in to do the autopsies on that. We determine the method and manner of death. In some cases, we have to depend, or the coroner's office would have to depend on the toxicology lab. Based on the law enforcement investigation, the pathology report, and or the toxicology, we have to certify that death, whether it's a homicide, a suicide, an accident, or natural causes. And if it's a case where you can't figure out what they died from, you have to make it an undetermined death. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leach?
Can you read it again so I can get
Sure.
clear on it? Thank you.
Well, first part, most people watch TV and see
Oh,
what
yeah.
the coroner's doing, but we would like you to explain what you think is the most important part of the coroner's job from the public's point of view.
Being able to sit down with a family member who's lost a loved one and explain to them through their emotions and in a manner that they can understand what happened to their loved one. It can be pretty tough sometimes when you're dealing with somebody who's just lost somebody unexpectedly, or you're at their house telling them that their loved one's been killed in an accident. Never a good day. Having a good knowledge of medical terminology is beneficial. Having a lot of training is beneficial. And having the ability to be compassionate, sometimes when the situation is very volatile. There's times family members get very angry with you. They attack the messenger, basically. Having a good knowledge of what goes on in the autopsy room, having a good knowledge of how to do an investigation, having good knowledge of criminal investigations is beneficial. I have all that as well. It's not like you see on TV. It's not driving a car fast. It's not carrying a gun. It's none of that stuff. It's emotions, being compassionate, being understanding, showing empathy, and helping people get through the painful time of their life, which could be the worst day they've ever experienced in their life.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Leach, you'll go first on this next question. It is estimated that there are over 115 deaths a day in the United States from opioid overdoses. From your respective backgrounds, this is for both of you, how big of a problem is this in Benton County, and what, if anything, more could be done to help prevent such deaths?
It's a substantial problem in Benton County. My last shift I worked, I had 2 overdoses in a row. 1 opiate, 1 methamphetamine. So it's more than just opiate, it's other drugs out there too. What can be done to prevent it? It's a tough one. A lot of it, people use drugs, they self-medicate. It has a lot to do with mental health issues and other issues that they may not be able to reach out and seek help or know where to get help. I'll throw a couple of numbers out there. Last year we had 48 suicides and 18 confirmed drug overdoses that we called accidental drug overdoses. They could have been suicides, we don't know. But many of those are drug related, and it comes down to the availability of opiates, whether they're heroin or they're prescription opiates. You have to educate the people. You have to be able to recognize if they have a problem, whether it be a mental health problem or a drug addiction problem. And that comes down to educating the public, educating family members, educating schools, getting the students involved. It really does funnel down. If you can get people educated and understanding young, hopefully they won't turn into drug addicts and decedents later on.
Thank you. Mr. Rabel.
I will tell you that from the statistics that I was able to come up with between 2012 and 2016, the death rates from opioid substances nearly doubled from 7.4 to 13.3 per 100,000 in population. It is obviously a problem in Benton County. I still work as a detective sergeant, and I can tell you that we're responding to a lot of overdoses. As far as the coroner's office, it contributes to the backlog that's been in all the news lately, so it doesn't help there. The problem is when you outsource, they talk about sending samples outside to private laboratories. When you outsource that, it's not just an overdose, because in Washington State we have a controlled substance homicide, and if somebody overdoses, it's not just their problem. We actually do try, and I can say that in the last 2 years we've been successful in actually charging people on there, so it actually slows down the investigation at the coroner level, I'm sure. But like I said, we didn't charge at a state level, it was charged at a federal level because it's easier to charge that way, but it's short of somebody admitting that they delivered the drugs to somebody, we have to use other means like people's cell phones, anything that you find at the scene. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Rabel, you'll go first on this question. How should the coroner balance, or should there be a balance, between cooperating with law enforcement and being transparent with the public?
And here it is, because I do work in law enforcement. When you're thinking that law enforcement is not being transparent, it means that they don't want to give up their investigation, because sometimes people that have not committed a crime want to come forward and say they committed that crime, so they actually slow you down in the investigation. And it should be understood that it's imperative that the coroner cooperate with law enforcement and vice versa, because both are trying to determine the facts in a case. It should be known that when a coroner actually sets up an autopsy, it's actually my people or the law enforcement that are actually receiving the evidence from the pathologist that's actually doing the autopsy. So I can't imagine not getting along with the coroner's office and vice versa. It would be counterproductive not to cooperate with each other.
Thank you. Mr. Leach.
Yes, it would be counterproductive not to cooperate with each other. I absolutely agree. The coroner does their investigation independently but parallel with law enforcement, and that's been something that the Benton County Coroner's Office has enjoyed for many years. And as Mr. Rabel pointed out, the last 3 coroners have been law enforcement, and when I win, the last 4 will be law enforcement. So we all know what it takes to do a police investigation, and so as a coroner, we know where we need to help the police do their investigation, and we know where to ask them to help us do ours. The autopsy portion is in fact done by a forensic pathologist who's hired by the coroner's office. We assist in those autopsies as a deputy coroner, or as a chief deputy coroner, whoever happens to be there at the time. Law enforcement does collect the evidence. We assist in the collection of that oftentimes, especially with large pieces of evidence, clothing and such. We also are available to help with pinpointing evidence on a body that, because of our experience in doing the medical legal side of the investigation, we can recognize things that may or may not belong, and we can also assist in that collection. So there are times that the coroner's office may do an independent investigation that maybe law enforcement's not happy with because of the situation, and there may be times that it happens. But that's the point of the coroner being independent from any other organization without outside influences or undue influences. They can do their investigation totally independent and do it right and transparent.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Leach, for this last question, I'll ask you to go first. This is a question from the audience. What makes you the most qualified to hold the position of coroner? What's the difference between the two of you, in your opinion?
Well, I covered a lot of that in my opening, but I'll reiterate on that some of it because that is the important part. Number one, I've lived in this community and I've worked in Benton County all my public service career, always. So I know the pulse of the community. I know who the people are. I know what goes on. I've been a law enforcement officer. There again, I know that side of the investigation. I know what people do. I know what criminals are. I've been a deputy coroner. Some might call me part-time. That is my job description, but I work about 240 hours a month, so I don't know if that's really part-time. So I do that. I've conducted over 700 hands-on medical reviews, medical legal death investigations. I've earned my certifications, national certification as a registered medical legal death investigator. Like less than 80 in the state, one of 5 in Benton and Franklin counties, and less than 1,800 in the nation have that certification. It's a pretty big deal. I assist in the operation of the coroner's office. In fact, for about 5 months last year, I was the primary person operating the coroner's office when there was a long illness. And with the assistance of the chief deputy coroner, we managed to get the office through just fine. And I'm involved in the budgeting process. I'm involved in scheduling. I'm involved in training. I'm involved in policy updates. I'm involved in pretty much everything that coroner's office does. Been there, done that. The transition will be very smooth and with no learning curve required. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Rabel, what do you believe makes you the most qualified?
When I started, I told you guys that it was an investigative position, and I will tell you that I'm a darn good investigator. I'm very successful, and I'm also a very successful supervisor of investigations, not just into death and all sorts of things. The position's going to take somebody that's capable of running a staff, somebody that's proven that they can run an office with budget, timesheets, payroll, everything along that. One of the things that I'm good at is I'm good at networking with people, and I have proven that over a 37-year career. The past coroners took over from their law enforcement job, like I said, as an investigator, and I don't mean to belittle Bill, but I'm the only one that has ever investigated homicides and some pretty in-depth death investigations. I'm the only one that supervised death investigations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now have our closing statements, and Mr. Rabel, please go first.
One of my first goals, if I'm elected, is to have the coroner's office become accredited. This is the best independent assurance to the people that we serve that we're doing things right. During the campaign, I discovered not a lot of people know what the coroner's office really did. Besides performing the statutory functions of the office, it's incumbent upon the office to help grieving families through the process. There are a lot of resources available to help guide them in what to expect in the days and weeks following the loss of a loved one. If elected, I will update the coroner's website and have printed handouts that guide people to such things as organ donation, death certificate questions, release of remains, and autopsy questions. I'll also have a link to grief counseling and the State Attorney General's link dealing with death, and such things as Veterans Assistance Fund that could help with burial costs. I will also have my office involved in every forum or symposium regarding public safety and public health, items such as suicide prevention and the exploding opioid epidemic and traffic safety. I have a lifelong passion to serve the public, and I would be honored to serve as your next coroner. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leach.
Thank you. At the end of my At the end of my opening, I'd mentioned that I have consistently maintained my platform for improving certain areas of the coroner's office since announcing my decision to seek the office. You can go back and look at any of my literature, look at my website, and these are my platforms. Technology lab backlog reduction. Wasn't brought up tonight, I'm very surprised, because it is a hot button item. That is something our office is working on, and he mentioned using, or Mr. Rabel mentioned we're using a private lab. We can use a private lab in many instances. They're certified to do certain cases. We don't send everything there, but for expediency, we do send some stuff there. It's very expensive, but it's worth it for law enforcement to get their cases closed. It's worth it for families to get the closure they need to get. Suicide and overdose drug reduction, overdose death reduction. We talked about that already. That was quick. So fast. Removing the cremated remains. We have cremated remains stored in our office. We're working with a funeral home, cemetery to get a placement for those where they have a dignified resting place. Partnering with surrounding coroner's office for regional forensic pathologists to save the money and make things get done faster. And of course, accreditation, but we have to do technology updates, policy and procedure updates, staffing, training, facility compliance, and MDI log, which is our reporting system. It all has to be in compliance before we can do accreditation, and it takes a while.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's all thank both of these candidates. This completes tonight's forum. You should have already received your ballot. And remember, it needs to be returned by November 6th. If you're going to mail it in, remember, you should probably mail it by November 1st or 2nd, because our mail now has to go to Spokane, come back, and that takes longer. Better yet, drop it in a drop box, and you'll save the state that postage. If for some reason anybody here has not yet registered to vote, you can still do so in person at the county auditor's office up till Monday the 29th in person. And please be sure to remind your friends and neighbors to vote. So thank you for attending, and good night.